Hi, this is Outlaw Bookseller Stephen E. Andrews, author of 100 must-read science fiction novels, various other bits and bobs, and I just thought it's probably time to talk a bit more about Philip K. Dick, and in particular about what's laughingly known as the VALIS Trilogy, because a while ago on the channel, one of the subscribers, Bob, hi Bob, asked about the publication order. And we sort of did some research into that. I looked at one of my bibliographies and talked about that a little bit, tacked that on the end of the Hay on Wye trip, which I know a lot of you have watched, the second Hay on Wye trip. And there is another one coming up, me and Jules Burt. If you don't know Jules' channel, check it out. We're going to do a little trip there at the very end of June, so you'll probably see the video early July. But anyway, that aside, it just got me thinking again about how long it had been since I read or reread the VALIS books, and it's quite a long time, so I thought I'd relook at them. And just to sort of before I delve into that, one thing to remember: in the 70s, if Dole wanted to sell a book, they put a pterodactyl onto it. So if you're publishing a science fiction novel, or you know somebody who is, say to them, put a pterodactyl onto it. It was good enough for Donald A. Wollheim, it was good enough for Philip K. Dick. It's probably good enough for me as well. So that pointless waffle about extinct giant reptiles that can fly aside, I thought we digress again just a little bit. A while ago I did a video about Lucius Shepard, and in the 100 must-read science fiction novel series, and I did a thing about life during wartime, and I mentioned Kalamantan. I couldn't find my copy. Then I remembered, of course, the one I've got is a limited edition, so I'll just show it to you. I did it a flash on the screen, but that's the actual book. And this is a jacket from a trade edition, and pretty handsome. You can probably still pick these up. They did a few of these at the time, and they're lovely books. Look at that, classically decorated end papers, silver gilt edging, signed, numbered, lovely white paper. What more can you want? So Legend limited editions, look them up. They're all long out of print. They all come from the early 90s. They're all worth a look. So that aside, let's move on to PKD. So I think one of the things to talk about very much with VALIS, and that is that when Philip K. Dick was discovered by the world outside science fiction, and he was discovered, of course, not because of his genius as an SF writer, but because of Blade Runner. And I harp on about this all the time, but I'm convinced that had Blade Runner not been made, Dick would have remained an obscure figure if he'd lived. He was getting more critical attention generally. He had a good reputation. His sales were strong in the UK and the US. And he was getting probably more mature in a classic sort of novelistic sense. His style was smoothing out. And probably by the time he was about 60, you know, he would have got a little bit more nodding and grudging respect. But it was the film that made the difference. But of course he was dead at 52, a great shame. And he was dead before Blade Runner was finished and released. And I remember the first time I heard about his death, because there was no internet then and what have you, I was sitting in the Capitol Cinema in Cardiff with my friend Andy, and we were watching Blade Runner, and we were blown away by it. And in the credits it said dedicated to the memory of Philip K. Dick, and I was really, really upset because I'd only discovered him sort of 5 years earlier, 1976, and you know, it just seemed like such a shame he never got to see the film, which is shocking. So you know, it's just not right. But the cult of Philip K. Dick has grown up since then. And my real point is that the Sunday supplements, the magazines, all the outside interest, all these people like Terry Gilliam, not there's anything wrong with Terry, he's a great guy, the woodwork going on by Philip K. Dick. My theory is that most of them didn't discover him through his writing. I think Terry might have, but they discovered him through Blade Runner, and that's all very well and good, but it means there's an undue amount of attention on Dick and not enough on, say, Ellison, Malsberg, Silverberg, Joanna Russ, Samuel R. Delany, Thomas M. Dish, a lot of the great figures from the same sort of period. So you know, if you're one of those people and you're interested in Philip K. Dick, look at the other great American SF writers of the time. You know, just there's more to it than PKD, because PKD was a genius. These guys had their genius as well, or their moments of genius at the very least, so don't discount them. So one thing that is very common in the cult of Philip K. Dick and the mass media, the newspapers, magazines, websites, what have you, is they talk about the VALIS Trilogy, Dick's religious experiences, when he says he was hit by a beam of pink light in the mid-70s, and that an alien, possibly religious intelligence, told him his son Christopher was very sick, and it proved that he was, and so on. People are really interested in Dick's sort of religious side, and personally I'm more interested in why people think Frolics 8, for example, is a minor novel. I don't think it is at all. So I'm more interested in the literary side of it, because I'm not a believer in supernatural agencies and things. So there's very interesting stuff, but it's not the primary reason I'm interested in Dick. I'm interested in seeing Dick being read more widely as a great philosophical novelist per se. So before I decided to make this video, I went back to a great book, and I know I promised to do a video about reference books, but this is something to watch out. This is very uncommon now. If you ever see it, do pick it up. And this is The Novels of Philip K. Dick by Kim Stanley Robinson, published by UMI, University of Michigan Institute, Studies in Speculative Fiction series. And this is basically Kim's sort of degree dissertation about Dick's novels, and it's fantastic. And I bought this gosh, when was it? 1987, and it was £30, which is a lot of money for a book then. And I've read it several times, and it's really good. It's my favourite book by Kim. I'm not a massive fan of his fiction. Great guy, obviously, and important SF writer. But for me, this is my favourite book by him. So do watch out for that, because it's fantastic. Unrivaled in Dick studies, I would say. So the VALIS Trilogy. Well, the interesting thing about the VALIS Trilogy, which in theory is comprised of VALIS, of course, Vast Active Living Intelligence System. I'll show you my copy now. I'm just going to fiddle around a bit, and that's my copy of VALIS, and that's the Kerosena hardcover World First Limited Edition. It was a paperback original in the States. That jacket is from the trade edition. This is actually the super limited edition. There are only 26 of these in the world. This is sort of leather along there, gilt edged, and this was the most expensive book I ever bought back in the 90s, and I paid £120 for it, and I agonised about it. There was a lot of money. That was more than a quarter of my monthly wages then, and I went for it in the end, and I wasn't sorry, because there are only 26 of these. It's a lettered state, and signed by Kim Stanley Robinson, did the introduction, and it's Roman numerals, and it's number 4 of 25 rather than 26. So it's not a lettered state, it's a Roman numeral state, and that's because it has one of Philip K. Dick's check stubs tipped in there. That is Philip K. Dick's signature, because in those days you get your checks sent back to you, and you would check them off that, you know, everything had gone right money wise. So, you know, there was it. Dick never did much in the way of signings and what have you. Only did a few convention appearances. He's quite a shy man, so you know, this is really important to me. But that was VALIS. And the interesting thing about VALIS is that it sort of splits Dick's science fiction and realist novel career. Early on in his career, when he was writing his early short stories, his early novels, he was writing mainstream novels, none of which were published at the time. Some of them are sort of weak, and they show his style developing. The earlier ones particularly not so good. Once he gets going, they're fantastic books like Puttering About in a Small Land, Man Whose Teeth Are All Exactly Alike, In Milton Lumkey Territory, wonderful portraits of small town America, and they're of great interest to anybody who enjoys the sort of shop sort of scenes in things like The Man in the High Castle. And also, if you like Time Out of Joint, you really love the mainstream novels. They're more or less all in print, and you know, they're really, really good, and my partner loves them. I love them as well. Loads of people who like Philip K. Dick really love them, so do read them. And he was trying to do both things to become a successful mainstream writer, and he was doing SF writing as well, because the SF was getting published. None of his mainstream novels were published while he was alive, apart from a limited run of Confessions of a Crap Artist. Now, if you've ever read Confessions of a Crap Artist, it is fundamentally the same novel as Time Out of Joint, with the SF bits taken out. So it's well worth reading the two together. So you've got two sides of the sort of same character, the same coin. And you get this thing in VALIS, because in VALIS there's a character called Phil Dick, the writer, and there's a character called Horse Lover Fat, which is supposedly a German retranslation of Philip K. Dick. I'm not sure how that works. But it sort of goes into sort of all sorts of religious stuff. And really, I don't want to talk too much about VALIS, because I think it's a brave mistake. It's an ambitious book. There's a lot about religion in there. There's a lot about what is real. There's a lot about drugs. and the conflict in the mind of these two characters, and it is very, very hard to sum up. So I think you just have to read it. But I would say before you read VALIS, there is an alternate version. And the alternate version, I'm just going to pop this back in the slipcase. And I may as well show you when it was released. It came with this little booklet here, Cosmogony and Cosmology, which is an excerpt from Dick's private journals about religious matters, cloth-bound guilt. And that was later issued as a paperback chapbook as well by Kerosena. And at some point I'm going to do a Kerosena video and show you their sort of full range more or less. I did do one once, but I wasn't satisfied with the quality, so when I can get the quality up, we'll do that. So that's VALIS. So what I would say is that, when you read the trilogy, it is a thematic trilogy. It's not one story. It's different looks at the same sort of philosophical concepts. So don't go into it thinking you're going to read, a beginning, a middle, and end. It ain't like that. What I would say is before you read VALIS, try and find its alternate version, which was little known until it was published in the late 80s. And it's not really referred to in the Kim Stanley Robinson book. And that's Radio Free Albemarle. This is the UK hardcover first from Seven House. And Radio Free Albemarle is a more conventional, straight ahead, novelistic telling of the events and ideas in VALIS, but with more of a thriller plot. And this is one of my favourite Philip K. Dick novels. I think it's less ambitious than VALIS, but it's a far better book. It succeeds a lot more. And it's set in this alternate America where there's a president called Ferris Fremont, who's obviously like a bit of a take on Richard Nixon. And there's a mysterious conspiracy around a word, a ram check, which is sort of scrawled into pavements and what have you. And it's an absolutely fantastic book. Let me just see if I can take out the bag here, and I'll read you the blurb, because that'll sum it up better than I can do, because I haven't prepared this as usual. I do these things off the cuff just as I do in my work as a bookseller, and that's part of the point really. I could do an academic lecture. I used to lecture at universities, guest lecture now and again, but I don't do that anymore, so it's just off the cuff. So this is what the blurb says inside, and this was the same on the Grafton paperback from the same period, which I think was a true UK first. As America gasps in the stranglehold of a skull-crushing totalitarian regime, a supernatural intelligence speaks from the stars. You see, supernatural and stars, it's a science fiction intelligence. It's not a supernatural intelligence, that's fantasy. A ram check, the word scratched in the sidewalk of the president's childhood home. A ram check, the name of the subversive society with no official membership, whose sole purpose is to overthrow the American government. A ram check, the word printed on a book which contains the president's signature, a book in the hands of a Communist Party organiser. A ram check, the name of a woman who may hold the key and who only has weeks to live. Will the agents of the omniscient succeed in their mission of liberation, or will the seek and destroy tactics of President Ferris J. Fremont extend the mind-numbing grip of the antagonist across the parameters of the free world? So there you are. Sounds exciting, doesn't it? And it's a great novel. And part one, Phil. So it's about a writer, a guy called Phil, a guy called Nicholas, and they come across all these things, and it's a really wonderful book. And and there's a lot in first person. First person was uncommon in Dick's oeuvre, and I don't know why I'm reaching for this bag. I just did. And basically, you get this wonderful thriller type story and all these ideas of this alien intelligence which is up there communicating with this writer on Earth. And it's going to help him overthrow the totalitarianism of that's currently sort of infecting America, and at the same time answer some religious and philosophical questions about what's real and what have you, which really sort of engaged Dick a lot. And so read that first is what I would say. Get the story under your belt, and once you've got that story under your belt, this wonderful novel under your belt, you're ready then to tackle VALIS itself a bit more slowly and in a more thoughtful sort of way. And something that Kim Stanley Robinson said was that if you looked at VALIS as a trilogy, it was like a V, and VALIS was at the bottom of the V, and the other two books, The Divine Invasion, which is arguably the second in the trilogy, and the third one, The Transmigration of Timothy Archer, were the sort of two other sides of the V. And that's because The Divine Invasion is a science fiction novel, and The Transmigration of Timothy Archer isn't. It's a mainstream novel. And basically, they're all really good. Again, you're getting, you know, sort of first person in Transmigration, which is really, really great stuff. Because, you know, Dick didn't use it much. As I say, We Can Build You is one of his few novels with first person. I think it's the only science fiction one until these late ones, which is first person. He normally goes third person, omniscient, you know, very big casts and what have you. So there you go. So I'm going to read the blurb from the back of the Divine Invasion for you. And there's lots of things that refer to Dick in here. Like, for example, there's a singer in here called Linda Fox, which is Linda Ronstadt, because Philip K. Dick really fancied Linda Ronstadt, and who can blame him? She was so beautiful. And I'll just read what it says. It says, Christmas on Earth. Deep in cryonic suspension, Herb Asher thought he was still happily puttering around in his dome in the star system CY30, CY30b, listening to the latest Linda Fox album. If only he hadn't been such a nice guy, he'd still have been really there, instead of playing Joseph to the terminally ill and pregnant woman in the next dome and an obstreperous local deity. And now he had to go through it all again. The story had been oddly familiar the first time. Who would have thought that he, Herb Asher, would assist an invasion of his own home planet, Earth, even an invasion by the Son of God? So this is arguing about an invasion of Earth by Jesus. So it's this bizarre sort of idea. And through this, you know, Dick explores a lot of his interest in religious and philosophical ideas, which go back to the Greeks. You know, they got pre-Christian things. And Dick, of course, was a sort of a Christian. He went to church a lot and what have you. And so it's interesting, but it's still a great science fiction novel, but because it shows how he expanded, you know, the sort of limits of what was being done. It's just wonderful stuff, it really is. And the other part of the V was the Transmigration of Timothy Archer. And again, I'll read what it says in the back. Bishop Timothy Archer is California's most charismatic church leader, a single-minded seeker after the truth, prepared to change or even abandon the most sacred tenets of the Christian faith, prepared to accept that Christ's most famous sayings were recorded 2 centuries before he lived, prepared to see Christianity as a Middle Eastern mushroom cult, and prepared to be put on trial as a heretic. In his majestic wake bob the flotsam and jetsam of utterly wrecked lives. Death stalks his closest relatives, his son Jeff, his mistress Kirsten, but Timothy Archer will let nothing stand in the way of his quest. So it's about religious heresy, and it's a contemporary novel. It's really good, and you know, it sort of reminds you of things like After Such Knowledge by James Blish, particularly Dr. Mirabilis. And, you know, there's sort of anybody who's tackled sort of theological questions in fiction. So, you know, it's serious stuff, you know. So, but if you want to delve into that side of Dick, you know, you can do no wrong. One thing that Kim mentioned in his book, again, was about how the trilogy harked back to those early days when Dick was writing general fiction and he was writing science fiction, and how in Time Out of Joint and Confessions of a Crap Artist you had 2 versions of the same story. One got published, one didn't. And anybody who's read Dick's books in sort of like a chronological context will notice there's a real leap forward in terms of quality when you get Time Out of Joint. It was his first real masterpiece, I feel. I'm sure a lot of the fans feel the way. Some people won't, but you know, to me it's head and shoulders above things like Solar Lottery and The Sky. So the trilogy does hark back to that. So you get a science fiction side and a literary fiction side, and the two meshing and sort of layering on each other and shadowing each other, and it's very, very interesting. But I would say, to get the most out of the trilogy, do read Radio Free Albemarle first, because it's a more successful book than VALIS. If you are very, very into that stuff, if you want to get to the serious philosophical and religious side, you can read about that, and in a sort of external way. It's covered in a lot of the non-fiction books about Philip K. Dick, and you know, there've been quite a few biographies and things now, but really the biography to go for was the first one, Divine Invasions, The Life of Philip K. Dick by Lawrence Sutin. And this came out about 25 years ago. This is a Harmony book, signed first. I got this at the time. And I think I bought it in Forbidden Planet in London. It just happened to be signed on the end papers. And it's really good. Granada did it for a while, Grafton, or Paladin. It was actually Paladin in B format. And that's still the best one. There are others out there. I have read them, but they're not a patch on this. This is really, really heavyweight literary biography. Great stuff. So read that. And then you get all the biographical stuff about what Dick's state of mind was like in the 70s, when his son was born. And, you know, he'd been through quite a few marriages. He'd been through some drug dependency issues. You know, that sort of thing, not dependency but heavy drug use and things, and his legend had built up, and you know, he was a very sort of sensitive guy, and you see that in his letters, and his selected letters, which were published by Underwood Miller, are fantastic. He was somebody who was seeking recognition, and and he was very so humble about his achievements, but he's very proud of them at the same time. And you know, he was somebody who, you know, did suffer, obviously, but it's a great shame. But as I say, if you are really interested, read some biographical material, and also seek out this. Now, Dick wrote this sort of huge journal, which I think was about 1 million words, and it was like a religious exegesis, and this is In Pursuit of Valis, selections from the exegesis, published by Underwood Miller, and this goes back to the 90s, and this was edited by Lawrence Sutin, the Dick biographer. So this is another reason why you should go to the Sutin book if you can. And there were meant to be 2 volumes of this. There was only ever one. I think the second one didn't come out either because there wasn't the demand they anticipated. There was a schism, I think, between Underwood and Miller, and they went their own separate ways after doing some wonderful publishing of Dick, Jack Vance, various other people. Lovely, lovely books. And you know, it's interesting stuff. So if you are interested in early philosophy, the real and the unreal, Christian questions in a classical sort of context, the origins of Christianity, the different sort of arguable sources, this is very much the thing to do. So, you know, if you do approach the VALIS Trilogy, I would say, you know, don't read it in the way you'd read Dune or Lord of the Rings. You know, it is quite sort of heavy going. It's serious stuff. It's more like reading sort of Dostoevsky. You know, it's more like reading the Brothers Karamazov than anything else. So do read Radio Free Albemuth first. Go with that. Get that into it. It's a really exciting book as well. It's great. It's a great fun read. Even if you don't read the others, do read Radio Free Albemuth. I think it's massively underrated. There was a film of Radio Free Albemuth, which I've got here. There it is. It was years in production. It was a you know, it was sort of virtually a crowd-funded thing. It took years for the people to make some money. They put a lot of love and care into it. It's got a great cast. It's got Alanis Morissette in it, and that's Linda Fox. And again, this never had a UK theatrical release. It's shown in a few sort of festivals and things. I got this DVD from the USA. I'm not sure if it's out on Blu-ray now. This was like at least 15 years ago. There's very sympathetic portrayals. It doesn't quite come off. It's got the guy who played Herschel from The Walking Dead in it, and you know, it's fantastic. So you know, it's science fiction films, you know, never mind all this special effects and all that. Okay, they're 10 a penny now. The interesting stuff is the stuff where the ideas get across, and you know, and it's that thing. And if you think about Philip K. Dick, we've seen loads of terrible films of his short stories. There's a film coming of Vulcan's Hammer. There's that dreadful Amazon adaptation of The Man in the High Castle. Let's not go there. You know, we've only really had Blade Runner, which is an interesting take onto Android's Dream of Electric Sheep, you know, and but Dick's influence has come up in the work of Cronenberg and what have you. So maybe at some point in the future we'll see some better PKD films. Let's hope so. And something that was mooted, that has never happened, Paul Giamatti, the actor, he was in David Cronenberg's Cosmopolis. He was in John Adams, the wonderful American historical TV series. A great actor, really fine actor. He's always wanted to play Philip K. Dick in a biopic, and I think it was meant to be called The Owl in Daylight, which was the title of a book Dick intended to write but never got to start and finish. It was going to be, you know, at the time of his death he was talking about it. And you know, Giamatti had himself made up as Philip K. Dick, had publicity shots taken to try and raise money, and he's never been able to raise the money for it. What a great shame. Sort of thing that somebody Jeremy Thomas would do, you know. So a Dick biopic, what would it be like? Who knows? But you know, married 5 times, dead at 52, 50 books. There's got to be quite a lot to say, isn't there? Anyway, this is Outlaw Bookseller. Hope you enjoy tackling Radio Free Albemuth, and if you enjoy it, try the trilogy, take your time. Signing out for now. Bye.